Pierre Poilievre has never been one to hold back when taking on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. From fiery moments in Parliament to viral takedowns that had Canadians talking, here are 7 times Pierre Poilievre completely shut down and humiliated Justin Trudeau. Stay tuned. 2 of them will shock you.
A demotion that would see her replaced with carbon tax Carney, who had committed to the Prime Minister that he would take the job of Finance Minister after he, as the economic advisor after all, helped write this fall economic update with a $62 billion deficit included in it.
Pierre Poilievre didn't hold back as he exposed the real motivations behind recent political maneuvering in Ottawa. He pointed out how one Liberal minister, who initially supported Trudeau's agenda, suddenly changed her stance, conveniently only after realizing she was being demoted. It was never about principle, he argued, but about self-interest. Her replacement? None other than Mark Carney, the so-called carbon tax king, who had already promised Trudeau he'd take over as finance minister. Poilievre highlighted how Carney even had a hand in crafting the latest economic update, which included a staggering $62 billion deficit. And then there was Jagmeet Singh, the NDP leader who claimed he'd stand up to Trudeau, only to turn around and vote 8 times to keep him in power.
Vancouver and Toronto are now by far the most expensive housing markets in North America. We have the highest housing costs and the lowest incomes. Look at comparison.
He also laid out the harsh reality of Canada's housing crisis, comparing it to major U.S. cities to show just how broken the system has become. Despite having lower wages, Canadians are paying drastically higher housing costs than their American counterparts. He pointed to Seattle, where home prices are about 30% lower than in Vancouver, even though workers there earn significantly more. The same goes for Toronto, where housing costs far exceed those in Chicago, despite Chicagoans bringing home bigger paychecks. Poilievre made it clear, this isn't just bad luck. It's the result of failed policies, government red tape, and reckless spending that have made home ownership an impossible dream for many Canadians. While Trudeau continues to throw taxpayer money at the problem without results, Poilievre argues that real solutions, like removing barriers to building more homes, are needed to bring affordability back to Canadians.
I worry about the single moms who are struggling to pay for the massive increase in food prices that have gone up 37% faster in Canada than in the United States, something that coincided with the NDP Liberal carbon tax on farmers and truckers. I worry about the 28% of Canadians who said they're considering moving to another country.
He painted a stark picture of life under Trudeau's government, pointing to the crushing reality Canadians face every day. Food prices have skyrocketed, rising 37% faster in Canada than in the U.S., a direct result, he argued, of the costly carbon tax punishing farmers and truckers. The situation has become so dire that nearly 30% of Canadians are now considering leaving the country, unable to keep up with the skyrocketing cost of living. But it's not just the present generation that suffers. Poilievre warned about the staggering $1.2 trillion debt that future generations will inherit, much of it racked up in the last 9 years under the Liberals and NDP. He made it clear, reckless spending, high taxes, and bad policies are pushing Canada to the brink. While Trudeau keeps making excuses, Poilievre is fighting for real change to make life affordable again for all Canadians.
So many times he can't remember that it's all Canadians that needed to learn a lesson from his personal conduct. And now he says he's not responsible to vet the very people that come into contact with a visiting head of state. Is it that he's not responsible or that he's irresponsible?
Not only this, he didn't mince words as he called out Justin Trudeau's complete failure in leadership. He reminded Canadians that Trudeau once claimed the entire country needed to learn a lesson from his personal conduct. Yet now, when faced with a major scandal, he refuses to take responsibility. This time, It's about his government's failure to properly vet individuals who come into contact with visiting heads of state. Poilievre made it clear, either Trudeau is not responsible or he's simply irresponsible. Time and time again, he dodges accountability, shifting blame rather than owning up to his mistakes. Canadians deserve a leader who ensures competence and security, not one who shrugs off serious missteps. Poilievre's message was firm. Trudeau's recklessness isn't just embarrassing, it's dangerous. Hope you're enjoying this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the movement for real change and accountability.
Opposition is being very irresponsible right now in his accusations, when in fact he knows the truth, and it's why every party in this House has asked for the resignation, which has now been received by the Speaker of the House.
Karina Gould fiercely defended the government, accusing the opposition of irresponsibility in their attacks. She emphasized that the Speaker of the House had already taken responsibility and resigned, as it was solely his decision to invite and recognize the controversial individual in Parliament. Gould made it clear that the Prime Minister was not involved in the decision, and yet the opposition continued to push accusations for political gain. She argued that Pierre Poilievre knew the facts, but was deliberately misleading Canadians to score points. For her, this was a moment to focus on accountability where it was due, not to spread misinformation. She urged Parliament to move forward responsibly, rather than allowing what she saw as reckless partisan attacks to dominate the conversation. Gould's message was simple. The opposition should focus on facts, not political theater.
Well, I am responsible enough to show up for work, Mr. Speaker. You know, I mean this literally. Has there ever been a greater diplomatic embarrassment in the history of our country? I mean it literally.
Pierre didn't hold back as he slammed what he called the greatest diplomatic embarrassment in Canadian history. He pointed out that this scandal wasn't just a domestic issue. It had made headlines worldwide, turning Canada into a laughingstock. Whether in coffee shops, boardrooms, or gyms, people across the globe were talking about the disgrace that unfolded in Parliament. Poilievre made it clear, this wasn't just a mistake. It was a failure of leadership at the highest level. While Trudeau dodged accountability, Poilievre showed up, demanding answers and real responsibility for the damage done to Canada's reputation.
Of Her Majesty's loyal opposition to stray so close to misinformation and disinformation, I would ask them to be more responsible.
Order! During the uproar, Conservative MPs say Trudeau uttered an expletive that cannot be heard on the recording.
Justin Trudeau pushed back against the opposition, accusing them of spreading misinformation and reckless rhetoric. He insisted that their approach was not only misleading, but also irresponsible, urging them to stick to the facts instead of playing political games. Trudeau framed himself as the voice of reason, calling for accountability in a way that didn't distort the truth. He challenged Pierre Poilievre and his party to engage in constructive debate, rather than fueling public outrage with what he saw as exaggerated claims. For Trudeau, responsible leadership meant focusing on solutions, not amplifying misinformation for political advantage. What do you think of the moments so far? Let us know in the comments.
Of our resources, we will cut taxes on our workers, our businesses to bring home more production to this country. We will stand shoulder to shoulder with the men and women in uniform.
Pierre Poilievre made it clear that every single Conservative would stand united against tariffs on Canada, emphasizing that putting the country first was the priority. He stressed that Canada needed to fight these tariffs from a position of strength. Poilievre outlined his vision, unleashing the full potential of Canadian resources, slashing taxes for workers and businesses, and bringing more production back to the country. For him, the solution wasn't just about complaining. It was about taking action to ensure Canada's economic resilience and standing strong in the face of external challenges. His message was simple: Canada must always come first.
The government has finally revealed its true deficit number. Remember, this finance minister, this outgoing and now former finance minister, told the world that she was putting in place guardrails to limit the damage that her deficits could do.
He slammed the government's latest deficit figures, pointing out that the outgoing finance minister had once promised to keep the deficit under control with guardrails in place. Yet, the reality was a staggering $40 billion deficit, an amount so massive it was fueling inflation and putting Canadians further in debt. Poilievre made it clear that this level of spending was reckless and unsustainable, warning that it would only worsen the economic challenges Canadians were already facing. He acknowledged that the minister had set a cap on the deficit, but argued that even that was far too high to be considered responsible, as Pierre remains steadfast in holding the government accountable. His call for change and responsible leadership is more urgent than ever as Canadians face mounting challenges. Stay tuned for more videos